Hello, everybody. We are back for UFC 309, John Jones versus Stipe Miocic. This is actually a pretty good card, so let's get into this and break this one down. I got the new Robert Whitaker hair and goatee update. So in support of Robert Whitaker getting his jaw snapped by Hamzat, because, we all know I picked him. And so I'm just, giving a little support to Bobby Knuckles here. Hold on, I have really bad allergies. All right, so let's break this down. The first fight of the night is between Veronica Hardy and Eduarda Moura. I'm leaning towards Veronica Hardy in this fight, although I'm not 100% confident. I just feel like she's kind of turned a new leaf since, she got married to Dan Hardy. If people don't know that, Dan Hardy, most OG fans will know him. He's British welterweight. Red Mohawk, fought GSP, fought Condit, fought Chris Lytle, fought Rumble Johnson. Been around for a while, so commentator, used to be a commentator for the UFC, now he's with PFL. But anyways, Veronica Hardy, before that, was honestly not very good. But then after she got married to Dan Hardy, it seems like she leveled up quite a bit, with the change in her training and everything. One second, I need some fucking water here, man. But anyways, she's really gotten better. She's mostly a striker. Very good at cutting angles, very good footwork. She's constantly floating and moving around. Good kicks. Just overall very good, crisp technical striking. And her grappling defense has also improved a lot. Eduarda Moura didn't impress me too much in her last fight. She is 10-1, I believe. Let me double. Yeah, she's 10-1. She did lose a split decision to Denise Gomes. Although, I don't know how one judge scored that fight for her, but anyways, whatever. But yeah, I'm leaning towards Veronica Hardy by decision here, and that's going to be my pick, is Veronica Hardy by decision. I feel like she's going to be able to stuff some of the takedowns. And then on the feet, I just feel like she's better. I feel like she's quicker, she's more accurate, more versatile, and I think she'll outpoint Eduarda Moura and basically just use more technique, better kickboxing, better striking. The one area I'm a bit worried about is the clinch. Eduarda Moura is a little bit taller. She's a little bit lankier. And I am a bit worried that she could possibly jump back and get her back at some point in this fight, as I'm having a fucking allergy attack. Hang on a second. No edits. But anyways, yeah, I'm going Veronica Hardy by decision here, as I'm dying from tuberculosis. But anyways, yeah, I got Veronica Hardy by decision. So we're going to move on up to the next fight on the card, and that is Basel Hafez versus Oban Elliott. A lot of people are riding with Oban Elliott, and I get it. If you were to break this down on paper, Oban is probably the more technical fighter, both on the feet and in some of the wrestling and grappling exchanges. Although Basel Hafez is also a pretty good grappler himself, there's just a bit of a different style. Basel is more of a powerhouse, just, physically strong, will take you down, will kind of force things a little bit. Whereas Oban is a little more technical and a little more finesse with how he grapples and how he, takes his shot entries and with his grappling in general. On the feet, also, I feel like Oban is a little more technical, although I'm not really impressed with Oban's striking, to be honest with you. It's just there. It's there enough to initiate his grappling. And with Basel, he did have that short notice debut against Jack Della Maddalena, and looked pretty damn good. Actually had a pretty competitive fight, put Jack Della Maddalena in some bad positions, but then he fought Mickey Gall. And I'll be honest with you, I picked Basel Hafez in that fight, and I really thought he was going to win that fight pretty easily, and it actually ended up being a really close fight. And I did pick Basel in that fight, but to be honest with you, I wasn't so sure he should have won that decision. It was a pretty close fight between Basel Hafez and Mickey Gall. Mickey Gall really impressed me in that fight, which I'll talk about later. But yeah, I think I'm actually going to lean towards Basel Hafez because I'm just not sure Oban, is a real welterweight. I believe he used to fight at 155. And I just feel like Bazell Hafez is going to be a little bit too big, a little bit too strong. And I don't think he's going to get controlled in the grappling the same way most of Oban Elliott's opponents have been to this point. And also, Oban, I'm a little bit worried about his chin. You know, he's been put out a couple of times. And even in his Val Woodburn fight, he did get hurt and rocked pretty badly. And actually almost got KO'd by Val Woodburn. And I don't like seeing that, man. And Bazell, he is tough. He's durable as fuck. He's got an iron chin. He's just one of those guys he's never going to quit. No matter how ugly the fight gets, he's never going to quit. And I like that. And I feel like he could out-muscle and just out-physical Oban Elliott in some of these grappling exchanges. And also, if Bazell lands, while I don't think Bazell is the better striker technically, you know, offensively and both defensively, he does have power. And I feel like if he can land on Oban, he can really hurt him. But I don't know, man. I feel like this fight's going to be pretty wild. And I feel like Bazell in his strength and just his physicality is going to be the difference here. So I am going to go Bazell Hafez by decision here. I think Oban Elliott is pretty tough. So I don't know if I see him getting finished, but I do see him getting kind of out-muscled and just out physicality. Is that a word? Physicality in the fight. So I'm going to go with Bazell Hafez by decision here. I believe he's an underdog. Let me double check. There's no odds, so I don't fucking know. I didn't really look at the odds, but I think he is an underdog. But I am going to go with Bazell Hafez by decision here. So moving on up, we have Mickey Gall, who just fought Bazell Hafez in his last fight. And we got Ramiz Brahima. Brahima has been in the UFC, I think since 2020. Hasn't been very active. I think he had a pretty bad injury. And then he ballooned up, and then he came back, and I think his most recent fight was against Themba Garimbo. Let me double check. Yep, it was. It was against Themba Garimbo. And looking at his record, man, just every time he seems to step up in competition, I'm talking about Ramiz Brahima, he loses. And to be fair, you could kind of say the same thing about Mickey Gall. But Mickey Gall's fought way better overall fighters. I mean, the best guy Ramiz has fought was Themba, and he lost pretty one-sided. He's also pretty much a submission or bust guy. Not a very good striker. Not even the greatest offensive wrestling, to be honest with you. But his jiu-jitsu just doesn't seem good enough to submit, UFC caliber opponents. As I blow my nose, give me a minute. I'm only doing this to extend the video time, by the way. No, I'm kidding. I really do have shitty allergies and immune system, so I'm going to have to get some tissue and some water throughout the fucking video, because these allergies are just whooping my ass today. But anyways, yeah, I think I'm going Mickey Gall with the underdog in this one. I liked how he looked against Bazell Hafez, and I feel like he is going to be a better striker. His striking, it has improved. And I also just feel like grappling-wise, he might be better than Ramiz too, man. Mickey Gall is a jiu-jitsu guy first. That is his background. He does have pretty good jiu-jitsu. And he is bigger too. He is going to be the bigger guy in here. And I just don't see Ramiz really controlling with the wrestling. And I don't see him outstriking Mickey. I don't see him submitting Mickey. I feel like Mickey Gall has more ways to win this fight. And I'm going to pick Mickey Gall. By decision. Ramiz is tough. He's tough. He was able to survive against Themba. And I feel like Mickey Gall will be able to outpoint him, outstrike him, and use grappling and defense. And this is going to be more of a striking match. And I got Mickey Gall by decision here. Probably 29-28. Maybe Ramiz could steal around, but I'm going Mickey Gall here by decision. More experience against higher level guys. And stylistically, I think it's a bad matchup for Ramiz Brahima, to be honest with you. So I am going to go Mickey Gall by decision. Lots of fucking decisions lately, huh? But anyways, yeah, Mickey Gall by decision. So moving on up, we have Marcin Tybura versus Jonathan Deniz. This is a striker versus grappler matchup. And I'm going to favor Tybura just because he can grapple pretty well. We've seen that over the years. He is a bit older. Jonathan Deniz, a kickboxer. Good striking, good technical striking. He's patient. But, man, he is just useless off his back on the ground. And this fight, to me, is basically whoever gets to their spot first. So if Tybura gets Janata down, I think this fight's pretty much over. I just don't think Janata will have absolutely anything off his back for Tybura. You know, this isn't Sergey Spivak who's going to fucking roll up, you know, swivel his hips into an armbar or work his way back up to his feet. And on the feet, if Janata can get a few clean shots off on Tybura, he probably will knock him out. You know, he probably will hurt him enough to knock him out, but I don't see that happening. I'm going to go Marcin Tybura. I'm going to, you know, favor him getting a takedown first over Janata, you know, just sparking him early. So I'm going to go Tybura by, I'm going to go submission, probably rear naked choke. I feel like he could probably do to Janata Deniz what he did to Tai Tuivasa. So I'm going Marcin Tybura by submission, probably in the second round. I feel like he'll probably have to get through a couple of exchanges in the first round that are a bit like, oh shit, you know, he got tagged. But then eventually I feel like he'll be able to get a body lock and get a trip, get a takedown, get on top. And then once he gets on top, I think the fight's pretty much over, man. I don't really think Janata Deniz has anything off his back for somebody like Marcin Tybura. So yeah, I got Tybura by submission in this one. Second round, he'll probably have to survive, you know, an early onslaught from Deniz where he gets clipped with a couple of shots and you're like, oh shit. But then he'll probably get a clinch, body lock, you know, get the trip, get the takedown, get top control pretty easily, ground and pound. Janata will probably give up his back at some point, and Tybura will probably just sink in a rear naked choke. So yeah, I got Marcin Tybura by submission here. So moving on up, the David Onama fight, I believe, got canceled, so we're going to skip that. It's still on the UFC website. We got Jim Miller versus Damon Jackson. I'm going Damon Jackson on this one, man. Jim Miller, I like him, and I hope he wins. But I just feel like Damon Jackson's grappling defense is going to be good enough to avoid getting submitted. On the feet, both guys, you know, I probably favor Jim Miller on the feet a little bit. I feel like he's got better low kicks, you know, a little more crisp striking. Although Damon Jackson has this awkward style, and he can throw volume. But I feel like Damon Jackson could clinch him, wrestle him, take him down a bit, avoid the submissions, and win a decision here. I think it's going to be a close decision. You know, it's going to be a pretty close fight as I'm dying here. So, yeah, I got Damon Jackson by decision. Very close fight. Tough fight to pick. But I just feel like Damon's a little younger. He's going to be able to outwork Jim Miller. Going to be able to, you know, use his wrestling, use his pace. But Jim Miller is absolutely, you know, a decent pick if you were going to take him, because he could probably, you know, I could see him cracking Damon Jackson and then wobbling him and then guillotining him or some shit, you know, or just chopping up his legs early and compromising him. But I'm going to trust Damon Jackson's pace. I'm going to trust his forward pressure and his style and his game plan to get it done here against Jim Miller. So, yeah, I got Damon Jackson by decision. Another fucking decision. Surprise. Although, you know, this one's tough. Like, a part of me wants to pick Jim Miller, but I'm going to go Damon Jackson. So, moving on up, we got Chris Weidman versus Eric Anders. Weidman actually looked pretty damn good in his last fight against Bruno Silva. Now, I get it. It's Bruno Silva. And before that, he looked pretty awful against Brad Tavares, which is not a good look because Tavares has not looked good himself as of recent. But Eric Anders has also struggled. If we look at Eric Anders' recent record, he struggled himself a bit. You know, he lost. Well, this is great. He's been grappling a lot, but in his actual fights, he did beat Jamie Pickett. Not that impressive. He lost to Marc-Andre Barriot, and he lost to Jung Young Park, Andre Muniz, Krzysztof Jotko. Pretty much every time Eric Anders takes a step up in competition, he loses. Now, I get Chris Weidman is older. You know, he's been through a lot of injuries, lots of surgeries, but you know what? I'm gonna trust Chris Weidman to be able to win this one. You know, I feel like he's gonna be the better wrestler. He's gonna be the better grappler. And all the people that Eric Anders was grappling against and he won, I feel like Weidman would beat probably even easier in a grappling match. And on the feet, Eric Anders definitely has his best chance because he does have punching power. You know, he is explosive. He is a big guy. But I don't know, man. I don't see him landing anything too clean on Weidman. And I feel like Weidman motivated, you know, probably at the end of his career here. New York, MSG card. I think I'm going to trust Chris Weidman to get this one done. I think he's going to be able to use his wrestling, get the takedowns, and Probably a decision. I was going to say maybe a submission, maybe a TKO ground and pound, but the Bruno Silva fight, I think, went to the third round. And while Weidman was, controlling him on the ground pretty easily, he wasn't really putting Bruno in any spots where he was going to finish the fight. So I feel like Eric Anders could probably weather, some of those positions and avoid getting submitted. Also Weidman is older, so if this were a younger Chris Weidman, I think he'd run right the fuck through Eric Anders and probably submit him in the first round. But it's not. It's 40-year-old Chris Weidman. So yeah, I'm going to go Chris Weidman by decision. I think the wrestling is going to be the big difference here. Just the wrestling, honestly. As I fucking blow my nose. No edits. I remind you, no edits. So yeah, I'm going to go Chris Weidman by decision here. I don't know if he's the underdog or not. I don't care, but I'm going to go Weidman by decision. Moving on up, we got Jonathan Martinez versus Marcus McGee. Now, from what I've seen in just like forums and, other people's picks, this was probably one of the most split down the middle fights on this card between like MMA fans. A lot of people are riding Marcus McGee, and then the other half are going with Jonathan Martinez. I'm going Jonathan Martinez. I like Marcus McGee. I do think he's got some talent, and I was rewatching some of his footage, and he'll switch stances here and there. He'll mostly fight out of southpaw, but he does like to switch stances. His striking is a bit awkward. He has this weird movement pattern, but he also crosses his feet and gets out of position quite a bit. And I don't really like that. He does have punching power at bantamweight, and he is very physically strong, especially his upper body. His grappling is also pretty decent, pretty good wrestling. He's got some submissions. He's got like a guillotine. And again, good power. He likes to throw a lot of hooks. That's mostly what he throws. Not the most technical striker, but he is one of those guys that he starts off a bit slow, but then he really builds into the pace, and then he does end up actually keeping a pretty high pace, Marcus McGee. Jonathan Martinez, though, man, has fought way better overall fighters. Marcus McGee has been fighting, bottom-tier bantamweights since he's been in the UFC, whereas Jonathan Martinez has been fighting, really good guys. If we just look at the record here real quick and go through, let's go through Jonathan Martinez first. Let's see, Jonathan Martinez, the last few fights have been against Aldo, Adrian Yanez, and Saeed Nurmagomedov and Cub Swanson. He also has, fights against Davey Grant and Thomas Almeida, Andre Ewell. Earlier in his career, he struggled a little bit, but he seems to have kind of gotten past that, and he's leveled up Jonathan Martinez. Very good low kicks, powerful low kicks. Decent hands, not the best boxing, but more of a kicker. Definitely some really powerful kicks. Very good low kicks. Good wrestler as well. A good grappler, good wrestler. And I feel like that's going to be the difference is the kicks and then the grappling defense. Martinez, I feel like will be able to chop Marcus McGee's legs down, when he moves all awkwardly and crosses his feet. I think that's going to be a big problem for Marcus McGee is him crossing his feet and just getting out of position a lot. And I think Martinez is going to chop his legs down. And avoid any grappling exchanges. Marcus McGee could probably get a takedown. He is very physically strong, pretty good grappler, pretty good wrestler. I could see him getting a takedown here or there, but I don't really see him holding Jonathan Martinez down and really controlling him or submitting him. And I also don't see Martinez doing that to Marcus McGee. I don't see him really controlling him or out-wrestling him that much. I think it's going to be mostly a striking match, where Marcus McGee is to be trying to move forward, close the distance, throwing those short, tight hooks. Wherein Jonathan Martinez is going to be more on the outside, patient, maybe a little bit lower volume, but he's going to be really timing things and chopping those low kicks. And I feel like that's going to be the difference is the leg kicks. I think Jonathan Martinez is going to be able to get a leg kick TKO in this one. I think Marcus McGee is very, very open to leg kicks the way he moves. And I think Martinez is going to chop the fuck out of his legs and probably end up getting a TKO out of it. Even if it's not like necessarily from the low kicks, he'll hurt him enough with the low kicks, compromise him enough that he can actually start to land shots on the feet with his hands and possibly get him out of there. So I am going to go with Jonathan Martinez by TKO on this one. I think the experience and the leg kicks are going to be the big difference. So I got Jonathan Martinez. So moving on up, we got Mauricio Rufy versus James Lontop. Lontop took this fight on very short notice. Mauricio Ruffy is a part of the Fighting Nerds, that whole crew down in Brazil with Cal Baralho, Mo Ruffy, why am I forgetting his name? He just fucking fought. God damn, Carlos Prates. There we go. I don't know why I was forgetting that, but he comes from that team, and he's looked really good in his UFC debut, and overall in his career, he has one loss in a fight where he was winning pretty handedly, and then he got clipped towards the end and got dropped and did get put away. But overall, he is a very, very good striker, very loose with his footwork, kind of keeps his hands low. A lot of comparisons to early Conor McGregor, when Conor was in Cage Warriors and then first kind of came into the UFC. A lot of comparisons between Mauricio Ruffy and that version of Conor. And I do see it. He does kind of have a similar wide karate stance, but also kind of like the hybrid boxing also, where he throws uppercuts and he chains together his punches and his kicks. Explosive, wiry and rangy for the division, and has legit punching power in his hands. We haven't really seen too much of his grappling in the UFC, so it's kind of hard to, judge that. But I'm assuming he's not, a bad grappler. A lot of those guys at the Fighting Nerds team seem to have pretty good grappling and pretty good defense, at least. Cal Baralho is offensively a pretty good grappler. And Mo Ruffy, huge favorite. Should be a huge favorite, and I'm going to go Mauricio Ruffy by knockout. I think he's going to be able to get James Lontop out of there. James Lontop just fought Borashev, I want to say. I'm pretty sure he fought Borashev. Yep, fought Borashev. Went to a split decision, although I don't know what the judges were smoking because Borashev won that fight pretty easily. So yeah, I am going to go with Mauricio Ruffy by TKO in this one. I think he's just levels above James Lontop, and the accuracy is going to be way too much. This is going to be, I think, a pretty good performance from him, breakthrough performance. But I would like to see him, fight somebody a bit higher up in the rankings, somebody a little bit better, maybe creeping towards that top 15, maybe not top 15 yet, but somebody better than James Lontop. So yeah, I'm going to go with Mauricio Ruffy, or why I like to call him Mo Ruffy, by TKO. Probably second, maybe third round, because James Lontop, while not being the best guy, he is pretty tough. Like, he's not one of those guys that's just going to fucking roll over when you hit him. So he is pretty durable. So I could see him, lasting a while and taking a sustained beating. So I'm going to go either late second round or somewhere in the third round TKO for Mauricio Ruffy in this one. I think it's a pretty easy fight for him. So moving on up, we got Viviane Araújo versus Karine Silva. I'm going Karine Silva. She's on a roll. Araújo, she's been so-and-so at the top flight of the division. And I think Karine Silva is on her way up, and I just think that she's a better overall prospect here. And yeah, I'm going to go Karine Silva either by submission or decision. She's got some sub skills. She's got good knee bars, leg locks. She is kind of sneaky with the way she can wrap up subs. So I'm going to say, I'm going to go submission. I've been going decision a lot. I'm going to go Karine Silva by submission. Let's go second round. I got Karine Silva. If not, she'll probably win a pretty easy decision. But yeah, I got Karine Silva. So moving on up, we got Bo Nickel versus Paul Craig. This fight is an interesting fight. Definitely a big step up for Bo Nickel in terms of UFC experience. Paul Craig, hasn't been doing so good, lately. He is getting older. Paul Craig is one of those weird guys where he has wins over people he shouldn't have wins over, and he has losses over people he shouldn't have losses over, for the most part. And he's on the ground. Paul Craig is extremely dangerous. It doesn't matter who he's fighting. He's always going to be a threat on the ground with wrapping up a sub. But he doesn't have great wrestling. He doesn't really have an ability to get guys down all that well. His striking is also very mediocre. Mostly a kicker. He will throw kicks from the outside, body kicks. He'll throw head kicks. He might attempt a spinning back kick here and there. Mostly a very kick-heavy approach from Paul Craig in terms of his striking. Bo Nickel, a bit of the opposite. From what we've seen in his striking, he's more of a boxer, and I believe his mom was actually a pro boxer. So we all know Bo Nickel's wrestling credentials, but I really don't think that's going to play a factor in this fight. I think this is going to be a striking match. Paul Craig ain't taking down Bo Nickel, and I don't think Bo Nickel's taking down Paul Craig. It would be kind of stupid. Even if Bo Nickel theoretically were to be able to out-grapple him for the most part on top, he's still kind of playing with fire he doesn't need to be playing with if he's doing that. So I think this fight's going to be a striking match. And I do think Bo Nickal's going to win. I think Bo Nickal's hands are much quicker. I think he's got power. And just Paul Craig's too hittable, man. Doesn't move his head, doesn't really move his feet that well. And I just don't see those kicks really giving Bo Nickal too much trouble. So yeah, I'm going to go Bo Nickal by knockout in this one. He's going to get it done with the hands. I'll go second round. I think the first round's going to be more of a feel-out process where both guys are kind of wondering, okay, how's this fight going to play out? Are they going to try to grapple? But I don't think so. I think Bo Nickal's going to build his confidence in this one. He might eat a few kicks to the body, to the leg, but eventually he's that pressure. He's going to start pressuring, and then he's going to start landing the hands clean. And I'm going to go Bo Nickal by TKO. In this one, it's going to be a striking match, I think. Interesting fight, though. Interesting fight. And I actually do want to see some grappling. I want to see how Bo Nickal handles somebody like Paul Craig on the ground with his wrestling. I just don't think it's going to happen, man. And it's smart for Bo Nickal not to engage in the grappling in this one. There's no fucking reason for him to do that. There just isn't. He's playing with fire if he does that. So moving on up, we have... It is the co-main. So we got Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler, the rematch. Chandler's been out for a while. We all know the whole thing with him and Conor. Oliveira, lost his title. Then he lost to Arman in a very close fight. I'm going Charles Oliveira, man. But whenever Michael Chandler fights, I'm never too confident in picking against him because he's kind of like the lightweight version of Derek Lewis in the sense that he could pretty much one-shot KO anybody. Even if they're better than him, he's good enough where he could probably still land a good shot and just spark you out cold, flatten you. So there always is that kind of chance in a Michael Chandler fight. So it is kind of, it's pins and needles when you're picking against Michael Chandler, as he does have that kind of explosive KO power where he could just fucking flatline somebody at any given moment. But overall, skill for skill, Charles Oliveira is a better fighter. He's a better overall striker. He's a better overall, grappler once the fight hits the mat. And Chandler in the first fight hurt him really bad in the first round. Oliveira survived. Oliveira actually did end up taking his back, but Chandler had good defense. Was able to get out of that position. Hold on, is this a 5-rounder? It is a 5-rounder. That changes a lot. In a 3-rounder, Chandler has a much better chance at winning this fight. But since it's a 5-rounder, man, I got to go with Charles Oliveira by submission. I think he's going to probably similar to the first fight, honestly. He's probably going to get hurt. He's probably going to have to survive, some oh shit moments for Michael Chandler. And then eventually he's probably going to wear Chandler down a bit. Maybe second, third round. I think Chandler will be able to extend this fight a little bit further than the first fight. The first fight ended pretty much immediately right away in the second round. Oliveira caught him with a left hook, dropped him, and then TKO'd him. I think it's going to go a little bit longer, but ultimately I do think Oliveira is going to get the submission here. He'll probably get hurt, probably have to survive, some moments from Chandler. Then he'll probably hurt Chandler on the feet, and then he'll probably find a way to get to his back at some point and lock in the submission. So I'm going to go Charles Oliveira submission, probably in the third or fourth round. I do think it's going to be a little more of a war this time, and it's going to be extended. But ultimately, I am going to go Charles Oliveira by submission, fourth round, rear naked choke. So moving on up to the main event between Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic. The fight everyone's been talking about. This fight, there's so many unknowns and so many questions here. Stipe's been out for basically going on 4 years now. It's been over 3 years. His last fight was against Francis in, I think, 2021, where he got KO'd. Jon, also not the most active guy in recent years. We know that his last fight was against Ciryl Gane. Interesting fight. Obviously, it should be Tom Aspinall fighting, but that's not going to happen, so we got this. And honestly, man, I feel like a lot of people are counting Stipe out in this one. Stylistically, if you break it down, Stipe is actually a pretty hard matchup for Jon. But that's assuming it's prime Stipe, the last time we really saw him. And Ngannou is a much worse matchup for Stipe, I think, than Jon is. Because Ngannou just has that fucking nuclear power, man. And the reality is John doesn't. John's not going to be able to just flatline Stipe with punches like that. John might be able to knock Stipe out, but it's going to be a fucking head kick or like a flying knee or just like a perfectly placed clean elbow on a clinch exit or something. It's not going to be, from punches. And there's, again, so many questions in this fight. How is Stipe going to look? We assume he's probably been in the gym. It's probably not like he's just been, fucking getting fat and doing whatever since that last fight. He seems like he's been in the gym training, angling for a big fight. Obviously, Ngannou left the UFC. That fight kind of went out the window. And then now he's got this John Jones matchup. Again, stylistically, Stipe does pretty much everything that gives John trouble. He is tall. He's got a long reach. He's got good boxing, pretty good takedown defense and grappling defense. And just overall, that's basically what John has struggled with in his career the most, is exactly what I described. And we don't know much about John, especially on the feet. John is obviously still a good grappler. We saw that against Gane. And we've seen some of his training footage. He still looks pretty good in some of his grappling training, at least. Obviously, that's training and not a fight. But I assume John Jones is still a pretty damn good grappler. And that's going to be the question here. John is coming to this fight lighter. I think he said he's in the 230s, so he's pretty much relatively the same size as he was when he's fighting at 205. He's just not doing a dehydration weight cut. And Stipe seems like he's put on a little more weight since his last few appearances, because against DC in the second and third fight, and then against Francis in the second fight, Stipe was actually really fucking lean, man. I think he came in at like 232 for Ngannou in the rematch, which is pretty crazy. I mean, there's light heavyweights that are cutting from like 232 down to 205. So that was really, really light. He does look heavier now, and I do think he said he's gained some weight, and it looks like it. He's probably in the 240s. Maybe he might even be in the 250s now, Stipe. So he will be a bit bigger, which I think is a good thing for him in this fight. John will be a bit lighter, and I think that's because John's preparing to move back down to 205. I think he's angling for a fight against Alex Pereira, and I think that's going to be his cop-out. He's probably going to retire after this fight, relinquish the heavyweight belt, and then he'll probably negotiate with the UFC, and then he'll come back and fight Pereira or whoever the 205. It's either going to be Pereira or Magomed Ankalaev, more than likely, at 205, and he's just going to basically say, I was never a real heavyweight. It was just a one-off or two-off experiment. And then he's going to be like, oh, I'm going to move back down to 205 and fight Pereira and whoever, because those are easier matchups for him than Tom Aspinall or, other top-ranked heavyweight contenders. I mean, Pereira, he'd probably just submit Pereira. Magomed might give him more of a tough fight just because Magomed could wrestle and grapple defensively a bit, and he could also box and strike. So that might stylistically be a harder matchup for John than Pereira. But anyways, back to breaking down this fight. I'm going to go John, man. I'm going to trust John being a little bit younger than Stipe. Stipe's been out for almost 4 years. And also in the DC fights, DC was able to kind of lay on top of Stipe for a couple of rounds and just kind of control him. And I feel like, and that was DC right at the end of his career when his wrestling had really, diminished compared to when he was younger. He had a lot of back injuries. He was older. DC, I could do a whole video on that, but DC probably ever since the Volkan Oezdemir fight was not quite the same guy that he was prior to that in terms of his offensive wrestling. And he was still able to control Stipe for like 2 full rounds in those fights, second and third fights, with his wrestling. And I feel like that's what John Jones is going to be able to do. I feel like if John could take Stipe down, Stipe's going to have a pretty hard time getting back up off his back. And I could see John Jones ground and pounding him, advancing position, and then eventually locking up a sub and just strangling Stipe, honestly. But it's a hard fight because we don't know what Stipe's going to look like at 41 or 42 off a 3-year, almost 4-year layoff. And we don't know what John really looks like on the feet. That's the thing, is John even said in his last fight against Gane, he didn't feel right on the feet. He said he felt kind of slow and just not as fluid. And again, that fight was quick and there was pretty much no striking. So we don't really know how John's going to look on the feet. He is coming in lighter, so maybe that'll help him. But who knows, man? If John can't take Stipe down and control him the way that I'm thinking he can, and Stipe can make this fight a striking match, honestly, I kind of favor Stipe. If it's the same version of Stipe that, fought as the heavyweight champion against DC and against Overeem and some of those guys, if it's even close to that same version of Stipe, I honestly think he'll win this fight on the feet. I just don't think it probably is, and I think John will be able to take him down and will be able to get top control and will be able to land the ground and pound and eventually work his way to a submission. So I got John Jones by submission here, and then he's probably going to move back down to 205. After a while, he'll come back after his little retirement and then fight Pereira or Magomed, whoever, at 205, and he'll probably win the light heavyweight belt again, and then he might retire. But yeah, so I got John Jones by submission here. Again, though, kind of a hard fight to pick because there's so many unknowns here. We don't really know how John's going to look in the striking, and we don't know how Stipe is going to look in general after 3 years off. So yeah, I got John Jones by submission, though. That's the pick, and that's the card. So let's look through here, do a little recap. We have Veronica Hardy. We got Bazel Hafez, Mickey Gall, Marcin Tybura. We got Damon Jackson, Weidman, Jonathan Martinez, Mauricio Ruffy, Karine Silva, Bo Nickel, Oliveira, and John Jones. Those are the picks. Let me pull this out here so I can see. So anyways, you guys, thanks for watching the UFC 309 breakdown and recap. Also, if you've made it this far into the video, if you have a Kick account, the streaming account, Kick, go follow me at ScuffJack2. I do some training videos, just mostly like dummy, heavy bag work and stuff. And I do it for fun. But anyways, if you made it this far, go on Kick. Follow me at ScuffJack2. And thanks for watching the UFC 309 breakdown. I will probably do a post-card breakdown for this. I think this card warrants that. It's fair enough. So I'll do a post-card breakdown for this UFC 309. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Have a good one.